I was browsing the Azur Promilia subreddit when I saw something big, and it wasn't the characters. There's one in specific. If you know, you know. We're all just looking respectfully, of course. A beta test was supposedly recently held, or is in the process of being held, and players are beginning to share their experiences. We're gonna go ahead here and comb through what was revealed, and then take a look at some of the comments. Do note, none of this is definitively confirmed. It is all rumored, it is all speculation, the validity of it anyway, until the Azur Promilia devs officially confirm all of this themselves. The first thing that was noted was that the game is going to be in the test version, 23 gigabytes. That is quite the enormous game, but at the same time, given this is a completely open world gacha game that has a lot of monsters, a lot of characters, a lot of creatures that you can tame, a lot of features that other gacha games just do not have, it makes sense. And given how far through the game we are supposedly through in terms of the development process, it makes sense. The game is already fully translated into English. That is fantastic to hear, but not just fully translated into English, just fully translated in general. The localization is already complete. This is fantastic news. We're likely gonna have a simultaneous release all around the world, rather than a release in Korea, release in China, release in Japan, and then a release for English speakers like you and me 6 months to a year later, falling drastically behind in terms of content cadence and content schedule. You can breed Kibos, which are disabled in the test version. I think the Kibos are like the monsters that you go out and collect, kind of like Pokemon, kind of like Pal World, because you can set these to work in your little settlement, your little farm. That is a very interesting thing to note. Breeding your creatures, capturing them is one thing, like capturing echoes in Wuwa is one thing. That is already cool. But if you could breed your echoes, does that mean, are they going to redefine how how the echoes, the artifact system works? Because if pets have their own unique stats, their own unique set bonuses, and you can breed them, can you transfer down traits? Can you transfer down skills and abilities? Because if that's so, you might not necessarily need to farm 100 of the same creature. You might need to just maybe farm 5, 10, 15 of them until you get 4 or 5 creatures with the exact traits you need, and then just keep breeding them until they result in the what are they called? Kibos, with the exact stats and abilities you desire. That would be incredible. Kibos can be tamed after beating them to low HP. So just like in Pokemon and just like in Pal World. That is cool. I like that. I like being able to go out there, fighting them, engaging them, and then after a certain amount of time has passed, capture them. I wonder how you capture them. Do you like throw a Pokeball? Kibos give different buffs and gameplay abilities. So we all expected that. It makes complete and utter sense. But at the same time, what is interesting, I think, is the fact that they give different gameplay abilities. I wonder what that means. I wonder if that means that they're going to give you like an additional skill, kind of like in Wuwa, or if they're just going to provide you like something passive. A lot of things to collect. Well, for collectors, that is, or kleptomaniacs as well, that is going to be a lot of fun. I enjoy seeing and collecting things out in the open world, so this will be great for me. There's a lot to do. That is very vague, but at the same time, great to hear, because if you play Genshin, if you play Wuwa, you know that once you hit endgame, there really isn't that much to do. There is no weapon banner right now, so during the test phase, that makes sense. Often, gacha games don't even have like character banners or weapon banners until they're getting closer to release. Weapons can be crafted with materials. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Okay. No, that is like, if you can craft max rarity weapons using materials, that would be sick. like SSR or 6-star rarity weapons, like weapons you could potentially get in the cash shop, that would be sick. Before we go any further, let me take a moment here to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are phenomenal, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Now let's keep talking. Combat is similar to Tower Fantasy, but with more impact, which is very contradictory to what we saw in the trailer. I genuinely hope the combat is not like Tower Fantasy. Tower Fantasy's combat is shit. Wuthering Waves is great combat. Zenless Zone Zero is great combat. Tower Fantasy does not. Please God, don't have Tower Fantasy's combat. It has wall running like Wuthering Waves. That is great. One thing I hate about Neverness is that wall running was designated as an ability for a single character, not all characters, which means if you don't have the red-haired girl in your party, you can't run up walls. You're instead required to slowly and arduously climb. That was a dumb design choice. This is a good one. The story is probably not in this test version. That is perfectly fine. Honestly, that is fine. But at the same time, if the story isn't available in the test version, how do we know if it's fully translated or not? Now, all of that sounds really cool. It genuinely does. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the comments, though. If your source is the same as mine, he also mentions that the game launcher asks if you're 16 or older before starting. Okay, cool, yeah. I'd like that. I like that. I'm not familiar with Tower Fantasy's combat. What's it like? Is this a good or a red flag? It's serviceable, but still the worst out of all action RPG gachas I've played. True, 100% true. Do you have a private contact? This is from an alleged tester that got invited for a private test that started on December 6th. I am curious to know when Manju eventually release information, how true this all ultimately ends up being. Honestly, this all seems really cool. I love the fact that we're getting closer to Ananta, we're getting closer to Azur Promilia, we're getting closer to Arknight's Enfield. 2025 is gonna be a big year. We're gonna have Ananta versus Neverness, which, I mean, a lot of us already know who the winner of that battle is gonna be. Then we're gonna have whoever the winner is, likely Ananta versus Azur Promilia. And then we're gonna have Arknight's Enfield come out of left field, and that's gonna compete with all of the above. 2025 and 2026 is gonna be a gacha massacre, and even more than that, a wallet massacre for us as players. But either way, I'm excited to be there to cover all of it. Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the 2 videos that are gonna be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.